NATO defence ministers are meeting in Brussels to talk about Ukraine as Kyiv embarks on its counteroffensive against Russia's invasion. During the two-day event, ministers will also discuss efforts to step up their country's own military supplies. NATO Secretary-General Jens Stoltenberg says he's expecting commitments on defence production.
Ukraine has launched a counteroffensive. What we see is fierce fighting. It's still early days, but we also see that the Ukrainians are making gains and that Ukraine is able to liberate occupied land. This is due to the courage, the bravery, the skills of the Ukrainian soldiers, but it also highlights and demonstrates that the support NATO allies have been giving to Ukraine now for many, many months actually makes a difference on the battlefield as we speak.
Making a difference. Let's talk about that with Alexander van Namen, DW's Brussels bureau chief, who's at the NATO headquarters. We just heard from the NATO chief there. What are you expecting from today's discussions and tomorrow's discussions?
Well, I think that the question how to step up support for Ukraine is front and center of the agenda, especially today. Right now, the members of the Ramstein group, the defense contact group for Ukraine, are meeting here in Brussels at NATO headquarters. Those are, of course, the members of the alliance, but also more than 20 other nations that will probably, as we just heard from NATO Secretary General Stoltenberg, they will announce new pledges. And I asked him what Ukraine needs right now to continue with its counteroffensive. And he said that the main focus now should be on the systems that Ukraine has already received. It is important, he said, to make sure that those systems are working on the ground, that they can be maintained, and that Ukraine is getting all the ammunition that they need right now.
So tell me, how does the potential rise in defence spending from 2% to 2.5% of GDP impact member countries?
This is one of the topics that the defense ministers will be speaking about because, of course, many of them understand how important it is to increase defense spending. 10 years ago, the alliance has agreed for every individual member to spend 2% of their GDP on defense. However, we also have to say that only 7 NATO countries has so far hit that goal. And now there is this new discussion that this goal of 2% should be just the floor, not the ceiling. But this is one of the most controversial discussions here, with some NATO countries, such as Canada, for instance, saying that they cannot increase their spendings. Others, for especially those in Eastern Europe, the Baltic states, for instance, they are spending more money already. So they are pushing the alliance to increase defense spending, especially now in the face of Russia's war on Ukraine.
Yeah, but it's interesting that so many countries hadn't yet even discovered that there was a 2% target there in place. But do tell us more about the role of the Ukraine Defence Contact Group in this meeting.
Well, they just started talking. As I said, we expect more pledges to be announced there. We heard from the U.S. Secretary of Defense, Austin, who said at the beginning of the meeting that the commitment to supporting Ukraine with whatever they need on the battlefield is enduring. And he also stressed already days ago that the focus should be on air defense to protect Ukrainian skies. But as I said, the meeting has just started. We'll see what kind of pledges we will hear later on.
What about the chances of Sweden becoming a member of the alliance? That's something that's also been pushed to the front of the agenda or landed on the agenda because of Ukraine.
Well, indeed, and Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg was asked about that, and he said that he thinks, and he is working very hard to welcome Sweden as a new member of the alliance by mid-July. That's the date where the NATO leaders will come together for the summit in Vilnius. However, we also have to say that despite very broad optimism here that Sweden eventually will become a member, Turkey and Hungary, but especially Turkey, is still blocking Sweden's application. And even though there was a meeting yesterday in Ankara about that, and everyone described this meeting as a very positive meeting that took place in a good atmosphere, there has not been a breakthrough so far on that issue.
OK, Alexandra, thank you very much for the update at NATO headquarters. Our Brussels bureau chief, Alexandra van Namen.